Morgan Chen became a name known to every species represented at Nexus, though reactions varied widely. Some viewed the match as a fluke, others as evidence of human deception. Many, however, recognized it for what it truly was, proof that preconceptions about species' capabilities required serious reconsideration. Morgan herself maintained her routine, attending classes and training sessions as before. The isolation she had experienced upon arrival gradually transformed into something different, not quite acceptance, but a wary respect that created its own kind of space around her. 3 days after the match, as Morgan studied alone in the Academy's vast library complex, a shadow fell across her table. She looked up to find Crex Valerian standing there, his bioluminescent patterns displaying subdued, complex sequences she hadn't seen before. "Initiate, Chen," he greeted formally. "May I join you?" Morgan nodded, closing her tactical studies text. Crex sat across from her, his forearms arranged in a neutral posture. "Your injuries have healed," she observed. The neural disruption techniques she had employed were designed to be temporary, but still potentially serious for Valerian physiology. "Yours as well," he noted, glancing at her face where advanced medical treatment had removed all trace of the cut above her eye. A silence stretched between them, not comfortable, but not hostile either. "I've been reviewing your Academy application," Crex finally said. "Your combat experience prior to enrollment was listed as Standard Earth Military Preliminary Training. Nothing that would explain what happened in the arena." Morgan met his gaze steadily. Perhaps Earth's standard training is more comprehensive than generally understood. Perhaps. His patterns pulsed with something that might have been amusement. Or perhaps there's more to your presence here than a simple exchange program. "Does it matter?" Morgan asked. "The result remains the same." Crex considered this. "Before our match, I believe humans were inferior. Limited. That your species' position in the Alliance was political charity rather than earned merit." His patterns shifted to deeper hues. "I was incorrect. One match doesn't change galactic perceptions," Morgan noted. "No," Crex agreed. "But it's a beginning. A recalibration." He leaned forward slightly. "The Academy Combat Tournament continues for another 6 weeks. Team competitions begin next cycle." Morgan raised an eyebrow, sensing where this was leading. Cohort 17 will be expected to participate. "As a unified team," Crex confirmed. "I've been nominated as team leader." But after recent events, his patterns rippled with complex emotions. "The team would benefit from joint leadership. Your tactical approach complements my strength. Together, we could be formidable." Morgan studied him carefully, looking for deception or hidden motives. She found none, only a warrior's pragmatic reassessment after encountering unexpected reality. "Joint leadership," she repeated. "Equal authority. Equal responsibility," Crex corrected, a hint of his former confidence returning. "Equal consequences for failure." "And the others, will they accept this arrangement?" Crex's patterns pulsed once, decisively. "They've seen what happens to those who underestimate humans. They'll adapt." Morgan allowed herself a small smile, the first genuine one since arriving at the Academy. Adaptation. The universal constant. She extended her hand across the table. After only the briefest hesitation, Crex clasped it with his primary right hand, not the formal warrior's grip from the arena, but something closer to an equal partnership. "To adaptation," he said, his harmonics carrying unexpected sincerity. "And consequences," Morgan added. Around them, the Academy continued its daily rhythms, students and faculty from dozens of worlds pursuing knowledge and advancement. But something fundamental had shifted, a small recalibration in the complex balance of species relations. It had begun with a single human standing her ground against prejudice and underestimation. It would continue with countless others following her example, until the day came when humanity's place among the stars was questioned by none. As the two former adversaries began discussing team strategy, Morgan thought briefly of her mother's words, spoken years ago, but still perfectly relevant. "They'll underestimate you." That's your advantage. The advantage had been pressed. The lesson had been taught. And somewhere on Earth, Commander Elise Chen was undoubtedly reviewing the match recording with quiet satisfaction, knowing that humanity's path forward had just become a little clearer, a little more assured. Not through politics or concession, but through the oldest, most respected currency in the galaxy, proven capability when it mattered most. Krex possessed natural advantages that couldn't be negated, but Morgan's preparation and strategic approach had leveled the field more than anyone had thought possible. Minutes passed. Both fighters showed signs of fatigue. Krex's movements, while still powerful, had lost some precision. Morgan's reflexes remained sharp, but her endurance was reaching human limits. The crucial moment came when Krex executed a complex feinting maneuver, using 3 arms to distract while the 4th delivered a strike to Morgan's exposed side. She anticipated the real attack, but couldn't fully evade it. The blow connected solidly, sending her staggering back. Krex pressed his advantage, following with a sweeping leg strike that finally knocked Morgan to the ground. He moved to pin her, his superior weight and strength seemingly ensuring victory. But as he reached for her, Morgan executed one final desperate maneuver. She drove her elbow into a specific point at the junction of Krex's upper right arm, the neural nexus that controlled his additional limbs. The effect was instantaneous and dramatic. Krex's supplementary arms seized up, the genetic modification that gave Valerians their greatest combat advantage, temporarily neutralized by a precisely targeted neural disruption. In the moment of shock that followed, Morgan slipped from beneath him, regained her footing, and delivered a perfectly placed strike to a pressure point at the base of Krex's skull. The Valerian froze, then slowly collapsed to his knees, his bioluminescent patterns fading to dim pulses. He wasn't unconscious, but the neural feedback had temporarily disrupted his motor control systems. Morgan stood over him, breathing heavily, blood still trickling from her facial cut, but upright and functional. The arena was absolutely silent. Then the Zentari official stepped forward, assessed Krex's condition with a scanning device, and raised his crystalline hand toward Morgan. Victory by incapacitation. Initiate Chen. The announcement seemed to break a spell. The crowd erupted, not in uniform cheers, but in a cacophony of reactions ranging from disbelief to excitement to outrage. Many simply sat in stunned silence, processing what they had witnessed. Morgan offered a formal bow to the official, then extended her hand to Krex. The Valerian's motor functions were returning gradually, his patterns beginning to stabilize. He looked at the offered hand for a long moment, conflicting emotions evident in his alien features. Eventually, he reached up with his primary right hand, the only limb fully under his control, and clasped Morgan's forearm in the traditional warrior's acknowledgement. "How?" he asked quietly, his harmonics stripped away. Morgan regained her footing quickly, her expression revealing nothing despite what must have been significant pain. She adjusted her stance, hands raised in a traditional Earth combat position. "First blood to you," she acknowledged. "But the match isn't over." Krex circled her predatorily. "It soon will be. That was approximately 12% of my full striking capability." In the observation deck, Lyra watched with increasing concern as the pattern of the fight emerged. Krex was systematically testing Morgan's defenses, using his superior reach and strength to land increasingly punishing blows while easily absorbing her counterattacks. "The human fights well," observed one of the Meridian students beside her, "but physics cannot be denied. Mass and leverage advantage belongs to the Valerian." Lyra's skin darkened with worry. "She's not fighting as expected. Too direct. Too willing to exchange blows." Down in the arena, Morgan was bleeding from a cut above her eye, her uniform torn at the shoulder, where Krex's clawed hand had caught the fabric. Yet she remained upright, still moving with purpose despite the punishment she'd absorbed. "You take pride in your resilience," Krex noted, his patterns pulsing with something like reluctant respect. "But pride won't prevent what comes next." He launched his most coordinated attack yet, a four-armed assault that incorporated feints, strikes, and grappling techniques in a blur of motion. Morgan evaded the first sequence but was caught by a sweeping leg strike that knocked her down. Before she could recover, Krex was upon her, two hands pinning her arms while a third closed around her throat. "Submit," he demanded, applying just enough pressure to restrict her breathing without causing serious injury. The crowd fell silent, anticipating the inevitable conclusion. Morgan's eyes remained focused, showing neither fear nor resignation. "Not yet," she managed, her voice strained but determined. Then she did something unexpected. Rather than struggling against his superior strength, she went completely limp, throwing off Krex's balance momentarily. In that fractional hesitation, she executed a maneuver that no one, least of all Krex, anticipated. Her fingers pressed against specific points on Krex's wrist, targeting nerve clusters unique to Valerian physiology, points that shouldn't be common knowledge, especially to a human. The effect was immediate. Krex's hand involuntarily spasmed open, releasing her throat. Before he could adjust, Morgan drove the heel of her palm upward into a precise spot beneath his jaw, another Valerian vulnerability, sending a neural shock through his system. Krex recoiled, his bioluminescent patterns flickering chaotically. His eyes widened in genuine surprise, and the first hint of concern. Morgan rolled away, regaining her feet in a fluid motion that belied her previous difficulty. She wiped blood from her face, her breathing controlled despite the exertion. "How did you?" Krex began, then caught himself. His pattern stabilized, anger replacing surprise. Academy regulations prohibit species-specific targeting techniques without prior disclosure. "Check the registration," Morgan replied calmly. Earth Combat Exchange includes certified training in multi-species combat methodologies, fully disclosed in my entrance documentation. The Zentari official nodded confirmation when Krex glanced his way. The match would continue. In the observation deck, the atmosphere had shifted dramatically. What had begun as a foregone conclusion was now something else entirely. Senior students leaned forward, their attention fully captured. Several faculty members exchanged significant glances. "She knows Valerian physiology," Lyra realized, her skin rippling with surprise. "But that's classified military information. How could a first-cycle human student?" Back in the arena, Krex had reassessed his opponent entirely. His casual confidence was gone, replaced by wary calculation. He circled more cautiously now, his patterns pulsing in rapid sequences, signs of intensive tactical processing. "You've studied our weaknesses," he acknowledged. "Impressive. But knowledge alone won't save you." He attacked again, but differently, controlled, precise movements rather than overwhelming force. Each strike targeted human vulnerabilities with surgical accuracy, testing Morgan's defenses systematically. Morgan met the new approach with adapted tactics of her own. She no longer attempted to absorb blows, but instead redirected momentum, using Krex's own force against him when possible. The neural stimulator at her temple was working at full capacity now, enhancing her reaction time to the upper limits of human capability. The fight evolved into something more complex than a simple physical contest. It became a tactical exchange, each combatant analyzing and countering the other's techniques in real time. Morgan opened her eyes. "Good." Lyra's skin rippled with confusion. "Morgan, I've analyzed the statistical probabilities. Valerians possess 4 times human strength, significantly faster reflexes, and Krex specifically ranks in the 95th percentile for his species. The combat parameters permit full contact with minimal restrictions." "I'm aware of the parameters," Morgan replied calmly. "Withdrawal is still an option." No one would. "Yes, they would," Morgan interrupted. "They would see it exactly as intended. Proof that humans don't belong here." Lyra's skin darkened, then at least employ defensive tactics. Survive long enough to force a technical draw. Academy regulations allow for. "I didn't come here to defend," Morgan said, standing. She stretched methodically, checking each muscle group in sequence. But thank you for your concern, Lyra. The Alturian studied her for a long moment, skin shifting through complex patterns. You are different than expected, she finally said. I will observe with interest. After Lyra departed, Morgan removed a small device from her pocket, a neural stimulator designed to heighten sensory awareness and reaction time. Not illegal under Academy regulations, but uncommon. She applied it to her temple, where it adhered to her skin, nearly invisible. A chime sounded, indicating 5 minutes until her match. In the opponent's preparation chamber, Krex Valerian was surrounded by admirers and supporters. His bioluminescent patterns glowed with confidence as he performed warm-up exercises that showcased his impressive four-armed physiology. The human actually showed up, remarked one of his companions, a burly Teshan with scale-plated skin. Braver than expected. Or more foolish, Krex replied, his voice resonating with artificial harmonics. Either way, today's demonstration will remind everyone of the natural hierarchy. A tournament official appeared at the entrance. Initiates Valerian and Chen report to the arena access in 1 minute. As Krex and his entourage moved toward the corridor, the official added, combatants only beyond this point, initiate Valerian. Krex's supporters reluctantly fell back, offering final encouragements. The Valerian proceeded alone through the access tunnel, emerging onto the arena platform to thunderous applause from the assembled crowd. Moments later, Morgan entered from the opposite side. The reaction was markedly different. Curious murmurs, a few scattered cheers from those who appreciated underdogs, but mostly skeptical silence. The two combatants approached the center of the arena, where the Zentari instructor who would oversee the match awaited them. Krex towered over both Morgan and the official, his yellow eyes fixed on the human with predatory intensity. Tournament protocols require acknowledgement of Academy combat regulations, the Zentari stated formally. Match continues until submission, incapacitation, or official intervention. Lethal force is prohibited. Permanent injury is grounds for expulsion. He paused, crystalline features refracting light as he looked between them. Acknowledge. Acknowledged, Krex rumbled, his patterns pulsing with anticipation. Acknowledged, Morgan echoed, her voice steady. The Zentari moved back, raising a crystalline hand. Combatants, take positions. They retreated to opposite sides of the circular platform. On the holographic displays above, their vital signs appeared alongside species-specific combat data. Krex's statistics were imposing. Strength indices, reaction times, and combat experience all registering in elite percentiles. Morgan's appeared distinctly average for a human, with only her tactical assessment scores suggesting anything exceptional. Begin, the Zentari announced, bringing his hand down sharply. Krex moved immediately, covering the distance between them with surprising speed for his size. His four arms extended in a complex attack pattern designed to overwhelm single opponents, two arms striking high, two sweeping low to cut off escape routes. Morgan didn't attempt to evade. Instead, she stepped directly into the attack, ducking under the high strikes while simultaneously pivoting away from the low sweeps. The maneuver brought her inside Krex's guard momentarily, close enough to land a precise strike to his midsection before spinning away. The blow seemed inconsequential against the Valerian's dense musculature. Krex laughed, the sound reverberating through the arena. Is that all, human? A love tap? He advanced again, more cautiously this time. Let me show you real strength. His next attack was more coordinated. 3 arms working in concert to herd Morgan toward the fourth, which delivered a powerful blow that caught her shoulder despite her attempt to dodge. The impact sent her skidding across the platform, drawing gasps from the crowd. A ripple of surprise moved through the onlookers. No one had expected the human to agree so readily to face a Valerian in combat. You'll regret that decision, Krex promised, his voice dropping to a near whisper. I'm going to make an example of you, human. A lesson for any others who think your kind belongs among your betters. With that, he turned and strode away, his entourage falling in behind him. Conversations gradually resumed throughout the hall, though many glances still turned toward Morgan's table. Lyra's skin had shifted to a concerned yellow-green. Valerians don't issue idle threats. He will target your weaknesses without mercy. I'm counting on it, Morgan replied quietly, bending to clean up the scattered remains of her meal. That evening, alone in her dormitory, Morgan received another anonymous message on her tablet. Tournament matchups confirmed. Krex versus human. Betting odds 20-1 against you. Medical team on standby. Smart money says you won't last 3 minutes. Morgan closed the message without responding and opened a secure communication channel to Earth. After a brief delay, Commander Elise Chen's face appeared on the screen, her features weathered by years of military service, but her eyes sharp as ever. Morgan, report status. Adaptation proceeding as expected. Morgan replied formally, then softened slightly. They're exactly as you described, Mother. Arrogant, underestimating humans at every turn. Commander Chen nodded. And the primary subject? Krex Valerian, 4th-generation military elite. Precisely the type we need to assess. Has he taken the bait? Morgan touched her bruised ribs from the simulation. Injuries she hadn't revealed during her medical scan. Completely. Tournament combat next week. Full contact authorized. Perfect. Commander Chen's expression remained professional, but her eyes held a glint of satisfaction. Remember your training. Remember why you're there. I remember, Morgan said quietly. Earth military intelligence needs accurate assessment of Valerian combat capabilities. Non-diplomatic acquisition of tactical data. Not just data, her mother corrected. Proof. Proof that humans can stand against any species in the Alliance. That we deserve our place, not through politics or pity, but through ability. Morgan nodded. I won't fail. I know. For a brief moment, the commander's mask slipped, revealing the mother beneath. Be careful, Morgan. Valerians are dangerous when provoked. So are humans, Morgan replied with a small smile. That's what they're about to learn. The communication ended, leaving Morgan alone with her thoughts and plans. She pulled out her tablet again, accessing a hidden file that contained detailed anatomical information about Valerian physiology, classified intelligence that no Academy student should possess. As she studied, Morgan recalled her mother's words from years earlier, when she'd first expressed interest in applying to the Academy. They think humans are weak. They've forgotten that we survived on a world that tried to kill us every day for millions of years. That we rose from prey to apex predators through intelligence and adaptation. They see our physical limitations but miss our greatest strength. We've never stopped fighting against impossible odds. The tournament would begin in 7 days. 7 days to prepare for a confrontation that would either cement humanity's place among the stars or confirm the whispered belief that humans didn't belong. Morgan Chen intended to make sure it was the former. Reckoning and aftermath. The Academy tournament arena dominated the central courtyard, a massive circular platform surrounded by tiered seating that accommodated thousands of spectators. Holographic displays hovered above, showing magnified views of the competition area along with participant statistics and match parameters. Today, those displays featured 2 names prominently, Krex Valerian and Morgan Chen. Word of the human-Valerian matchup had spread throughout the Academy, drawing an unusually large crowd for a first-cycle tournament. Senior students, faculty members, and even a few visiting dignitaries filled the observation decks. Betting pools had been established, with odds heavily favoring Krex. In the preparation chamber beneath the arena, Morgan sat alone, eyes closed in meditation. She wore the standard Academy combat uniform, reinforced fabric that provided minimal protection while allowing maximum mobility. Unlike many competitors who customize their uniforms with cultural symbols or clan markings, Morgan's remained unadorned except for the small earth insignia at her collar. The chamber door slid open, admitting Lyra. The Alturian skin displayed concerned purple hues. The arena is filled to capacity, she reported. News of your match has attracted significant attention. Later that day, as combat simulation results circulated through the academy, Morgan found herself the subject of unexpected attention. Some students regarded her with newfound curiosity, others with lingering skepticism. The isolated treatment continued, but with a subtle difference. The dismissal had been replaced by wary assessment. She entered the communal dining hall during the quietest period, hoping to avoid unnecessary interaction. The vast space accommodated the diverse dietary needs of hundreds of species, with specialized serving stations and atmospheric controls for those requiring specific conditions to consume nourishment. Morgan selected a standard protein meal compatible with human physiology and found a small table near the edge of the hall. As she ate, she reviewed the day's performance data on her tablet, identifying areas for improvement. Your climbing technique requires refinement. Morgan looked up to find Lyra, the Alturian, standing beside her table, food tray in hand. The tall, willowy being's skin currently displayed a pattern of neutral greens and blues. "May I join you?" Lyra asked, her translator rendering her musical language into slightly accented English. Morgan nodded, surprised by the request. Alturians were notoriously selective about their associations. "Your assessment of my climbing is accurate," Morgan acknowledged as Lyra sat across from her. "I trained in Earth-standard gravity. Centauri Prime's 1.2 G environment affects my technique." Lyra's skin rippled slightly, the equivalent of a nod. "Yet you completed the course within parameters. Most first cycle initiates fail the first simulation entirely." "Including Krex?" Morgan asked before she could stop herself. A flash of violet across Lyra's skin. Amusement. "Valerian records are classified, but rumors suggest his first attempt was problematic." Morgan considered this information carefully. Anything that might help her understand her adversary was valuable. "Why are you speaking with me?" she asked directly. Most students seemed determined to maintain distance. Lyra consumed a morsel of her crystalline food before answering. "Alturians value pattern recognition. You disrupt expected patterns. This is interesting." Before Morgan could respond, a commotion near the hall entrance drew their attention. Krex Valerian entered, flanked by a group of admirers. His simulation performance must have been impressive. His yellow eyes scanned the hall, locking onto Morgan almost immediately. Without hesitation, he strode toward her table, his entourage following in his wake. "The isolated human finds a friend," he announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear. "How touching." Lyra's skin flushed deep blue, a warning sign among Alturians. "Initiate Valerian," she acknowledged coolly. Krex ignored her, focusing on Morgan. "Your performance today was educational. For everyone." He placed his 4 hands on the table, leaning forward. "The Academy now sees what I already knew. Humans rely on trickery and evasion rather than honest combat." "Completing objectives efficiently isn't trickery," Morgan replied evenly. "It's tactical thinking." "Is that what you call it?" Krex's bioluminescent patterns pulsed with malicious amusement. "On Valerius, we call it cowardice." Several students at nearby tables were now openly watching the confrontation. Morgan felt the weight of their attention. This was becoming more than a personal dispute. It was a public test of whether humans deserved their place at the Academy. "Interesting perspective," Morgan said, keeping her voice calm. "Especially from someone whose species was genetically engineered for war rather than evolving naturally. One might call that an artificial advantage." Gasps came from several onlookers. Valerian genetic engineering was common knowledge, but rarely mentioned directly, considered something of a cultural taboo. Krex's patterns flashed crimson, his pupils contracting to pinpoints. One of his 4 hands moved with lightning speed, knocking Morgan's food tray to the floor. "You speak of things you don't understand, primate," he hissed. "Your species was still hunting with sticks when mine had already mastered the stars." Morgan remained seated, outwardly unperturbed by the display of aggression. "And yet, here we both are. Initiates with the same status, subject to the same rules." The dining hall had fallen completely silent. Even the academy staff were watching now, though none intervened. Such confrontations were expected, even encouraged, as part of the socialization process. Krex straightened to his full height, looking down at Morgan with unconcealed contempt. Academy tournament begins next week. Combat simulations with full contact permitted. I've already requested you as my first opponent. Morgan met his gaze steadily. Request accepted. Using the immobilized drone as a platform, Morgan leaped back to the cliff face, continuing her climb with renewed urgency. Unorthodox, the instructor murmured, but effective. Krex's patterns pulsed with growing frustration. She's still too slow. The final drone will stop her. The extraction point came into view as Morgan reached the top of the cliff. A small platform with a glowing perimeter. Standing between her and completion was the sixth drone, the most advanced of the sequence. Humanoid in design, it moved with fluid grace, armed with multiple stun weapons and protected by an energy shield. Morgan was visibly tired now, her uniform torn and dirty, perspiration soaking through the adaptive fabric. She'd expended significant energy in the climb, and the combat drone was designed to exploit such weakness. She circled the drone cautiously, looking for vulnerabilities. The machine mirrored her movements, its sensors tracking her with perfect precision. When she feinted left, it responded instantly, cutting off her path to the extraction point. Time was running out. The simulation had a 45-minute limit, after which it would be considered a failure. Morgan had less than 3 minutes remaining. In the observation room, the atmosphere had changed. Even those who had dismissed the humans' chances were now watching with undisguised interest. Krex alone maintained his disdainful expression, though his eyes never left the main display. Morgan made her move, sprinting directly toward the drone in a frontal assault that seemed like suicide. The machine braced for impact, energy shield at maximum strength. At the last possible moment, Morgan dropped and slid beneath the drone's guard, using the slick surface of the platform to reduce friction. The drone pivoted, surprisingly fast, its arm extending to catch her ankle. Morgan twisted, breaking the grip, but not before the drone delivered a glancing stun pulse to her leg. Pain flashed across her face as the limb temporarily lost sensation. She rolled away, putting distance between herself and the machine, dragging her numbed leg. The extraction point was 5 meters away. The drone moved to intercept. With her leg compromised, Morgan couldn't outmaneuver the machine. A direct confrontation would end in her defeat. Seconds ticked away. Simulation failure imminent, announced the system voice. 60 seconds remaining. Morgan Chen, daughter of Commander Elise Chen, had not come this far to fail. She reached down and removed her boot, then hurled it past the drone toward the extraction point. As expected, the machine's sensors tracked the movement, its programming interpreting the boot as a potential projectile weapon. In that fractional moment of divided attention, Morgan launched herself forward in a diving roll. The drone reacted, but too late. Its stun pulse struck the platform where she had been a split second before. Morgan completed her roll and slammed her palm down on the extraction point perimeter, just as the countdown reached 10 seconds. Simulation complete, announced the system. Extraction achieved. The jungle environment dissolved around her, revealing the bare simulation dome. Morgan lay on the platform, breathing heavily, her numbed leg gradually regaining sensation. In the observation room, silence fell again, this time with a different quality. The instructor's crystalline features reflected something close to approval as he made his final notations. Initiate Chen completes the course in 44 minutes, 52 seconds. Survival priority tactical approach. Innovative problem-solving demonstrated. Performance assessment. Above standard. Lyra's color-shifting skin rippled with blue tones, respect, in Alturian body language. The Meridians exchanged glances, reassessing their initial judgments. Only Krex remained unmoved, his bioluminescent patterns now completely dark, a sign of intense emotion among Volarians. Barely adequate, he muttered. And now she's exhausted while the rest of us are fresh. The real assessment begins when we face each other directly. The instructor turned to Cohort 17. Initiate Valerian. You will enter the simulation next. Parameters adjusted to maintain assessment equality. As Morgan exited the simulation dome on still shaky legs, she passed Krex in the preparation area. His massive frame blocked her path deliberately. Survival is not victory, human, he growled softly. You've merely prolonged the inevitable. Morgan met his gaze steadily. I completed the objective. That's all that matters. For now, Krex replied. But there are no extraction points in real combat. No safety protocols. Remember that when we meet in the arena. Morgan drove her elbow into a specific point where the sensor array connected to the main housing, a vulnerability she'd studied in Earth's defense databases. The drone shuddered, its systems momentarily disrupted. Before it could recover, Morgan wrenched the sensor array sideways, causing a cascade failure in the drone's navigation systems. The machine dropped to the ground, its operational lights fading. 1 down, 5 to go. Morgan retrieved her jacket and continued north, increasing her pace now that she'd confirmed the drone design. The jungle began to thin as the terrain grew steeper, offering better visibility, but less cover. From an observation room above the simulation dome, Krex Valerian watched with narrowed eyes as Morgan navigated the course. Beside him, other members of Cohort 17 monitored her progress on holographic displays. The human moves well, observed Lyra, the Alturian, her color-shifting skin reflecting her surprise. She disabled the first drone rather efficiently, added one of the meridians. Krex snorted dismissively. A basic training unit with predictable patterns. The difficulty increases exponentially. She'll fail at the third drone, perhaps the fourth if she's lucky. On the main display, Morgan was approaching a rocky outcropping where the second drone patrolled. This unit was more advanced, quadrupedal with enhanced sensors and faster response times. She paused behind a cluster of boulders, studying the machine's movement pattern. She hesitates, Krex noted with satisfaction. Fear overwhelming primitive instinct. But Morgan wasn't hesitating out of fear. She was calculating. The second drone's patrol route took it over a section of unstable rocks every 42 seconds. A potential advantage. When the drone reached the precise position, Morgan hefted a large stone and hurled it with precision at a supporting rock in the outcropping above. The impact triggered a minor landslide, burying the drone under rubble before its systems could react. In the observation room, silence fell. Interesting approach, the Zentari instructor noted, making an entry in his evaluation. Initiate Chen demonstrates environmental awareness and resource utilization. Krex's bioluminescent patterns flashed with irritation. Luck, nothing more. The third and fourth drones presented greater challenges, working in tandem, using more sophisticated detection algorithms. Morgan was forced to backtrack several times, losing precious minutes as she sought a way past their coordinated patrol pattern. Eventually, she managed to create a diversion using smoldering vegetation that confused their thermal sensors long enough for her to slip between them. Rather than engaging directly, she prioritized reaching the objective. A tactical decision that the Zentari instructor marked with approval. The final kilometer grew steeper, becoming a cliff face that required technical climbing. Here, the fifth drone waited, a flying unit that swept the cliff with detection beams. Morgan spent valuable time observing its pattern, identifying a 3-second blind spot in its sweep. She timed her climbs to those brief windows, ascending in short, controlled bursts before freezing in position during active scans. Her time is poor, Krex commented as the simulation clock passed the 30-minute mark. The Academy record is 22 minutes. Set by a Kalian with natural flight capabilities, the instructor reminded him. Different species, different assessment metrics. Halfway up the cliff, Morgan nearly fell when a handhold crumbled beneath her fingers. She caught herself with her other hand, muscles straining as she searched for new purchase. The drone reacted to the falling debris, sweeping its sensors toward her position. Morgan hung motionless, pressed against the rock face as the detection beam passed mere centimeters from her body. A single drop of sweat fell from her brow, catching the light as it descended. The drone's sensors registered the movement. It turned back, weapons systems activating. In the observation room, several students leaned forward. Even Krex seemed interested in how the human would handle this development. With the drone closing in and nowhere to hide, Morgan made a decision that surprised everyone watching. Instead of attempting evasion, she pushed off from the cliff face, launching herself directly toward the drone in a controlled fall. The machine fired, its stun beam missing by millimeters as Morgan twisted in midair. She collided with the drone, wrapping her arms and legs around its housing. The drone's flight systems strained under the sudden weight, altitude dropping rapidly. Morgan reached underneath the unit, fingers finding an access panel. 3 quick adjustments to the exposed circuitry, and the drone's programming reset to default mode, a safety protocol designed to prevent fatal crashes. It stabilized, hovering in place, weapon systems temporarily offline. The next morning arrived with the artificial dawn of Centauri Prime's controlled environment. Morgan performed her usual routine: physical conditioning, stretching, meditation, before donning the Academy's training uniform, a sleek bodysuit that adapted to each species' physiological needs. For humans, it regulated temperature and provided minimal impact protection. The training arena was a massive dome structure at the center of the Academy complex. Inside, advanced holographic and force field technology could create virtually any combat environment imaginable. As Cohort 17 assembled outside the entrance, Morgan noted the nervous energy among her teammates. Only Krex appeared completely at ease, his bioluminescent patterns pulsing with what seemed like anticipation. "First simulation is survival-based," announced the Centauri instructor, his crystalline features refracting the morning light. "You will enter individually and navigate to the extraction point. Obstacles will include environmental hazards and combat drones programmed to incapacitate. Performance is measured by completion time, tactical decisions, and efficiency of movement." The instructor's faceted eyes swept across the group. Initiates enter in reverse order of their entrance scores. Morgan's stomach tightened. That meant she would go first, a deliberate choice to disadvantage her, as subsequent participants would benefit from observing her mistakes. "Initiate Chen," the instructor called. "You will commence in 30 seconds. As Morgan stepped toward the entrance, Krex's voice carried across the assembly area. "Try not to embarrass your species entirely, human. Though I suppose that's impossible." Several students laughed. Morgan didn't react, focusing instead on the simulation parameters displayed above the entrance. Jungle environment. Elevated extraction point. 6 combat drones with escalating difficulty. The entrance slid open, revealing a wall of dense vegetation. Morgan took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown. The Academy's first test of whether humans truly belonged among the stars. Rising conflict. The jungle materialized around Morgan in suffocating detail. Dense foliage that limited visibility to mere feet, humidity that immediately beaded on her skin, and sounds that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The Academy's simulation technology was even more advanced than she'd been told. Morgan assessed her position. According to the briefing, the extraction point was 2 kilometers north, at an elevated position. 6 combat drones stood between her and success. She pulled a wide leaf aside, scanning the terrain ahead. The ground sloped upward gradually. She'd need to climb to reach the extraction point. Standing still made her an easy target, but moving blindly through unfamiliar terrain was equally dangerous. Morgan closed her eyes, focusing on her hearing. The artificial environment generated subtle audio cues. The mechanical hum of drones, the programmed rustle of wildlife. There, a faint whirring sound to her right, moving in a patrol pattern. Her first instinct was to hide, but that wouldn't advance her toward the objective. Instead, she grabbed a stone from the ground and hurled it far to her left. The crashing sound through the undergrowth had the desired effect. The whirring intensified as the drone investigated. Morgan moved swiftly in the opposite direction, keeping low and using the dense vegetation as cover. The jungle floor was treacherous, with concealed roots and sudden drops. She maintained her pace, mentally mapping the terrain as she progressed. The first drone appeared when she was approximately 500 meters into the course, a hovering spherical unit equipped with stunning appendages. Standard Academy design, similar to the training units on Earth. It hadn't detected her yet, scanning a section of jungle 20 meters ahead. Morgan evaluated her options. The drone's sensor range was likely 15 meters in these conditions. She could attempt to circumvent it, but that would cost valuable time. Neutralizing it would be more efficient. She removed her outer training jacket, a deliberate sacrifice of protection for tactical advantage. The drone's patrol pattern brought it closer to her position. Morgan waited, timing her breathing with the drone's movements, then flung the jacket high into the air on the far side of the drone's path. The machine reacted instantly, firing a stun pulse at the moving object. In that moment of distraction, Morgan sprinted forward, reaching the drone before its systems could recalibrate. She vaulted upward, grabbing the machine's lower housing and using her momentum to swing her body around it. The drone attempted to compensate, its stabilizers whining with the sudden weight shift. "A human. In my cohort." The voice came from behind, deep and resonant with artificial harmonics that Valerians use to emphasize their speech. The Academy standards truly have fallen. Morgan turned slowly, facing Krex Valerian for the first time. He stood nearly 7 feet tall, his midnight blue skin covered in bioluminescent markings that pulsed with each word. His fourth arm, the genetic modification that made Valerians such effective fighters, flexed unconsciously at his side. "Krex Valerian," she said evenly. "I've studied your species' combat techniques. Impressive, if somewhat predictable." Krex's yellow eyes narrowed, the bioluminescent patterns flaring brighter. "Studied, have you? From your primitive simulators on that backwater planet. How charming." He circled her slowly, a predator assessing prey. The other cohort members watched silently, unwilling to intervene. "I wonder," Krex continued, "if they admitted you as a genuine student or merely as a curiosity. A primitive specimen for us to study." Morgan kept her breathing steady, her posture relaxed but ready. The admission requirements were the same for everyone, Valerian. "I met them. Did you?" A dangerous gambit. Valerians were notoriously proud, and suggesting Krex might have received special treatment was deliberately provocative. But Morgan had learned early that sometimes the best defense was a precise counterattack. Krex's markings flashed crimson. Anger. "I ranked first in the Valerian Military Academy. My lineage includes 3 high commanders and a war strategist. Your species was still perfecting the wheel when mine built the gravity wells of sickness." "Ancient history," Morgan replied, allowing a small smile. "Today, we're both just initiates, equal under Academy regulations." Krex moved closer, looming over her. "Equal? We shall see about that, human. The training simulator will reveal the truth soon enough." He jabbed a clawed finger at her insignia. "Your Earth military may have secured you entry, but they cannot protect you here." The cohort orientation chimes sounded, sparing Morgan from having to respond. The faculty advisor, a stern-looking Zentari with crystalline exoskeletal features, approached. "Cohort 17, form up. Your dormitory assignments and training schedules are being transmitted to your personal devices. First simulation begins at 800 tomorrow. Preparedness is expected." As the advisor distributed equipment packages, Krex maintained his position uncomfortably close to Morgan. "The first simulation is always combat-based," he whispered, his breath hot against her ear. "A test of physical dominance and tactical superiority. I look forward to demonstrating the natural order of things." "Natural order changes," Morgan replied quietly. "Adaptation is the only constant." Krex's laughter was like stones grinding together. Philosophy won't save you in the arena, human. That night, in the quiet of her isolated room, Morgan reviewed the Academy combat protocols on her tablet. The simulations were designed to test not just physical strength, where many species naturally outmatched humans, but tactical thinking, adaptability, and improvisation. Her mother had prepared her for this, spending countless hours in Earth's most advanced combat simulators. "They'll underestimate you," Commander Chen had told her during their last conversation before Morgan left Earth. "That's your advantage. Never show everything you can do until absolutely necessary." Morgan opened a secondary file on her tablet, classified Earth military assessments of Valerian physiology and combat patterns. Their four-armed biology gave them tremendous advantages in close-quarters combat, but it also created specific vulnerabilities. Their nervous system, optimized for strength and speed, was particularly sensitive to certain frequencies of sound and light, information that wasn't widely shared outside Earth's defense community. As she studied, a notification appeared on her screen. A message from an anonymous sender. "Sector 7, Dormitory 12. The isolated human. Krex has marked you. First blood tomorrow. Sleep well, primate." Morgan closed the file, shut down her tablet, and placed it on the charging station. Then she removed her mother's combat knife from beneath her pillow, examining its carbon fiber edge in the dim light. She wouldn't bring it to the simulation, of course. Academy rules prohibited personal weapons, but holding it brought comfort, a connection to home and family. "They'll underestimate you," she whispered to herself, repeating her mother's words like a mantra as she returned the knife to its hiding place. "That's your advantage." Unexpected arrival. The gleaming spires of Nexus Academy pierced the amber sky of Centauri Prime like silver needles through silk. Orbital mirrors caught the distant red sun's light, casting the crystalline structures in a warm glow that belied the cold reception waiting inside. Morgan Chen stepped off the transport platform, her single duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her Earth military scholarship insignia prominently displayed on her jacket collar. She was the first human admitted to Nexus in 15 years. The air inside the grand atrium tasted filtered and sterile, scented with something Morgan couldn't quite place, metallic and sweet simultaneously. A holographic display above the entrance listed student orientations in 17 different languages. English was last and smallest. Identification demanded a tall, insectoid being at the registration kiosk. Its mandibles clicked impatiently as it regarded Morgan with compound eyes that reflected her image dozens of times over. Morgan presented her credentials chip. Morgan Chen, Earth Contingent, Advanced Tactical Studies. The being, a Vesperi Morgan recalled from her xenobiology studies, scanned the chip with visible reluctance. Human. Sector 7, Dormitory 12, clearance yellow. It extended a chitinous appendage, dropping a room key into her palm. Curfew is at 2300 hours. Academy time. Infractions result in demerits. "Thank you," Morgan said, but the Vesperi had already turned to the next arrival, a tall, graceful Alturian whose shimmering skin changed colors with each movement. Morgan navigated through throngs of new students, most standing at least a head taller than her 5'7" frame. Conversations in a dozen languages quieted momentarily as she passed. She kept her posture straight, her face neutral, exactly as her mother, Commander Elise Chen, had taught her. Never show weakness in unfamiliar territory. Assess, adapt, advance. The dormitory corridors were a maze of gleaming metal and soft blue lighting. Room 12 to 44 was at the end of a long hallway, isolated from the others. No accident, Morgan supposed. Keep the human at arm's length. She pressed her palm to the scanner, and the door slid open to reveal Spartan accommodations. A narrow bed, a desk, a small washroom unit, and a window overlooking the Academy's massive training grounds. Morgan unpacked methodically. Uniforms in the storage unit, personal tablet on the desk, her mother's old combat knife tucked beneath her pillow. The only personal touch was a small hologram of Earth's Pacific coast, the last place she'd visited with her parents before her father's death and her mother's promotion to the Joint Defense Command. A chime announced the beginning of orientation in 30 minutes. Morgan studied her schedule: Synopolitics, Advanced Physics, Tactical Theory, Combat Applications, courses designed to integrate the diverse species of the Galactic Alliance into a cohesive military and diplomatic force. At least, that was the propaganda. Reality, as her mother often said, had sharper teeth. The orientation hall buzzed with energy and nervous excitement. Over 300 students from 57 worlds gathered beneath the holographic emblem of the Academy, a spiral galaxy cradled in outstretched hands of various species. Morgan found a seat in the back row, aware of the empty spaces that quickly formed on either side of her. "Welcome, initiates," announced Dean Falassi, a tall meridian with silvery skin and eyes that seemed to contain galaxies. "You represent the finest young minds and bodies from across known space, selected to train as the next generation of peacekeepers and diplomats." The dean's voice carried effortlessly through the hall, his words translated simultaneously for each species. "At Nexus, you will be challenged beyond your limits. Many of you will fail. Some will excel. All will be transformed." Morgan listened attentively, noting which students nodded in agreement and which seemed distracted or disinterested. Behind the dean stood 6 faculty members of various species. No humans, of course. "You have been assigned to training cohorts based on your aptitudes and species characteristics," Falassi continued. "These will be your teams for combat simulations and group assignments." A holographic display materialized, showing cohort assignments. Morgan searched for her name, finding it in Cohort 17. Her teammates appeared to be a mix of species she recognized: an Alturian, 2 Meridians, a Vesperi, and, her heart sank, Crex Valerian. Even on Earth, the Valerians had a reputation: physically imposing, genetically engineered for war before joining the Alliance, notorious for their disdain toward lesser species, especially humans, whom they considered barely evolved primates lucky enough to have stumbled onto faster-than-light travel.